The sun hung low over the quiet town of Milford, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Wind brushed through the flags lined up along the memorial park, each one fluttering softly. Reminders of those who had served and never returned. An old man wheeled himself slowly along the gravel path, his hands trembling as he guided his chair toward the statue of fallen soldiers. His name was Sergeant Daniel Reeves, a Marine veteran who had lost his leg and part of his hearing in Afghanistan. He wore a faded brown jacket, its edges worn thin, and pinned to the chest was a single medal, the Purple Heart. On his lap, he carried something carefully folded, a small American flag, stained slightly with age. He wasn't there for any public event that day. He came every year, on the same date, to sit in silence beside the name carved into the black stone. Corporal Al-Jamiz, his younger brother, his best friend, his reason to keep breathing after the war. The park was quiet except for the sound of flags and distant traffic, but as Daniel rolled forward, a voice behind him broke the calm. "Hey, you can't go there." He stopped. A young police officer, mid-20s, fit with sharp sunglasses and a spotless uniform, was walking toward him. The officer's nameplate read Officer Ryan Cole. Daniel turned his chair slightly. "I'm just visiting my brother's name," he said softly. Cole frowned. "The park's closed for cleaning. No one's allowed past the tape." Daniel looked down. There was indeed a small section roped off ahead, but the name he came to visit was just a few feet beyond it. "I won't touch anything," he said quietly. "I come here every year. It'll take just a moment." The officer sighed dramatically. "Sir, rules are rules. You need to leave. There's no exception." Daniel smiled faintly. "There used to be no exceptions on the battlefield either," he murmured. "Still didn't stop us from saving who we could." Cole squinted. "What's that supposed to mean?" Daniel didn't answer. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small photo, two young men in Marine uniforms, smiling under a tattered U.S. flag. He looked at it for a long time, then whispered, "Hey James, it's me again." The officer grew impatient. "Sir, I said you can't be here. Either you move, or I'll have to escort you out." Daniel didn't even lift his head. He whispered to the stone, "You'd laugh if you saw me now, huh? Still fighting battles no one understands." Cole walked closer, his boots crunching against the gravel. "Listen, old man," he snapped, "you can't just sit here pretending you're some kind of hero. Everyone's got a story. Don't make mine about having to drag you out of here." A few bystanders nearby turned to look. Some frowned, some pulled out their phones. Daniel slowly looked up at the officer. His eyes were pale blue, tired, but not weak. "Son," he said gently, "you have no idea what you're saying." But Cole smirked. "You vets think the world owes you something. Sorry to tell you, sir, it doesn't." The words hit like bullets, quiet but piercing. Daniel's jaw tightened. He looked down again, his fingers tightening around the flag on his lap. His voice trembled as he whispered, "We didn't fight for the world to owe us anything. We fought so you could say things like that freely." For a brief moment, silence hung heavy. Even the wind seemed to stop. But the young officer crossed his arms. "Look, you can get sentimental all you want, but rules are rules. You're trespassing, and I don't care what story you have." Daniel's lips moved, forming a faint, pained smile. "Then I pity the uniform you wear, son." Just then, a deep voice came from behind the officer. "Ryan, step back." The officer turned, startled. Behind him stood a man in a dark gray suit, wearing a badge around his neck. Chief Michael Turner, the town's police chief. The young officer straightened instantly. "Sir, I was just..." But the chief raised a hand, his eyes locked on the veteran. His voice trembled slightly when he spoke. "Is that Sergeant Reeves?" Daniel looked up, surprised. "Mike Turner." The crowd grew quiet. Even the officer stopped breathing for a second. The chief walked forward slowly, his eyes softening. "I'll be damned," he said under his breath. "It's been, what, 15 years since the valley? You pulled me out of that burning Humvee." The young officer looked completely lost. "Wait, what?" The chief turned sharply toward him. "This man," he said, voice shaking, "is the reason I'm alive today. If he hadn't gone back into that ambush, half our convoy would have been wiped out." Ryan's face went pale. The old man sitting before him, the one he'd just mocked, had once carried his own chief through enemy fire. The chief knelt beside Daniel's wheelchair, his voice cracked. "You saved my life, Sergeant, and here I am, watching one of my officers disrespect you on sacred ground." Daniel shook his head softly. "Doesn't matter, Mike. He's just young. The world teaches respect differently now." But the chief's eyes hardened. He turned to the officer. "You're suspended, effective immediately." Ryan opened his mouth, but the chief's voice thundered. "I said now." The young officer lowered his head, speechless. The crowd that had gathered was silent. Someone whispered, "He mocked a war hero." Daniel looked up at the memorial again, his eyes glistening. "James," he whispered, "guess we're still teaching lessons after all." The chief saluted quietly. Then, one by one, others around the park began to stand. Civilians, workers, even the janitor, all stood still, hands over their hearts. For the first time that day, Officer Ryan Cole finally understood what the uniform truly meant. He stepped forward slowly, voice breaking. "Sir, I'm sorry. Daniel turned his chair slightly, smiled faintly, and said, apologies are easy. Respect is earned. Go earn it. The evening air in Milford had grown heavy, the kind of silence that carries shame. Officer Ryan Cole stood frozen beside the wheelchair, his chest tight, hands trembling slightly. The words still echoed in his head. Apologies are easy. Respect is earned. Go earn it. He had never felt smaller in his life. People slowly drifted away from the park. The crowd that had once watched in curiosity now left in silence. But a few stayed, an elderly couple, a boy holding a flag, a woman wiping tears. Ryan looked at the chief, but Chief Turner didn't meet his eyes. Go home, Ryan, he said quietly. Think about what that man carries, and what you don't. Ryan wanted to speak, to explain that he didn't mean it, that he was just following orders. But deep inside, he knew that wasn't true. He hadn't been following orders. He'd been following his ego. That night, the officer sat alone in his small apartment. The uniform he'd once worn with pride now hung limply over the chair beside him. On his table lay his badge next to his phone, which kept lighting up with news notifications. Local officer suspended after mocking disabled. Veteran, Marine hero, disrespected at town. Memorial. The video had gone viral. Someone in the park had filmed everything. He scrolled through hundreds of comments, each one like a knife twisting deeper. Disgrace to the badge. He should be fired. How can you mock a hero? Ryan closed the phone, his chest burning. He whispered to himself, what have I done? Meanwhile, across town, Sergeant Daniel Reeves sat quietly in his small apartment, staring at a picture of him and his brother, both in uniform, both smiling, both so young. He sighed. People change, James, he murmured. But sometimes, they just forget what sacrifice looks like. His neighbor, Mrs. Langford, knocked gently on the door. Danny, you okay? He smiled faintly. Yeah, just another day remembering. She smiled back softly. Well, the whole town's talking about you. You've gone viral. He chuckled quietly. I fought in 2 wars and never went viral. Guess all it took was getting yelled at by a rookie cop. They both laughed softly, but behind that laughter was something deeper, pain and forgiveness. The next morning, Ryan didn't sleep. He drove early to the station, still suspended but determined to face the chief. He waited outside the office door until Turner arrived. Sir, please, he said, standing. Let me fix this. I can't erase what I said, but I can make it right. The chief looked at him for a long moment, then said quietly, then prove it. Not to me, to him. Ryan nodded. Yes, sir. That afternoon, Ryan went back to the Memorial Park, but this time without his uniform. He wore a plain shirt and jeans. Daniel was already there, same as always, sitting quietly near the statue, a bouquet of wildflowers on his lap. Ryan walked slowly toward him. For a moment, he almost turned back, shame clawing at his throat, but he forced himself to speak. Sergeant Reeves. Daniel looked up. His eyes softened a little. Officer Cole. Ryan swallowed hard. I came to say something. Not sorry, not again. You were right. I don't understand what that uniform means, but I want to. Daniel didn't respond at first. The breeze carried the sound of rustling leaves between them. Ryan took a deep breath. My father, he was in the army. I never really knew him. He left when I was a kid. I think I carried that anger with me into this uniform. Tried to prove something. Maybe I was proving it the wrong way. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly, not in judgment, but in reflection. You wear the badge, son, he said softly, but the weight of a uniform, any uniform, isn't about power, it's about purpose. Ryan nodded. I know that now. I didn't before. He knelt down in front of the memorial stone, reading the engraved names. His voice trembled as he said, so many names. I don't even know half of them, but they gave everything. Daniel's voice lowered, calm but firm. Then make sure you live like you remember them. Ryan turned toward him. Teach me how. Daniel smiled faintly. I don't teach anymore, but I can tell you one thing. Respect isn't something you show when people are watching. It's what you carry when no one is trying. Nodded slowly, his throat tightening. Thank you for giving me a chance to learn that. Daniel smiled, a tear tracing the edge of his wrinkled face. That's how men grow, son, not from medals, but from mistakes. Later that evening, Ryan drove back to the police station. He walked into the chief's office and laid something on the desk. His badge. Chief Turner frowned. You resigning? Ryan shook his head. Just for now. I'm taking a few weeks off to volunteer at the Veterans Center. If I'm gonna wear that badge again, I need to earn it the right way. The chief stared at him, then smiled faintly. That's the first real thing you've said since this began. Ryan nodded. I just don't want to be the man who forgot what heroes look like. The next day, a video began circulating again, not the one where Ryan mocked the veteran, but a new one. It showed Officer Ryan Cole, in plain clothes, helping a group of elderly veterans rebuild the town's memorial fence. In the background, Daniel Reeves watched quietly, the faintest smile on his face. The caption read, Respect earned. Lesson learned. That night, Daniel sat by his window, watching the sunset paint the horizon red. He whispered softly, "You see that, James? Maybe the world still remembers." He placed the folded flag on the table beside him and saluted quietly, not to anyone, but to the idea that respect, once lost, could still be found. The following week, Milford seemed different. The same streets, the same park, the same quiet air, but people looked at one another differently now. For once, there was understanding where there used to be indifference. Local news stations began showing the new footage, not the shameful video that broke the town's pride, but the one where Officer Ryan Cole worked shoulder to shoulder with veterans, rebuilding the old wooden fence around the memorial. The comments under that video were different. 2. Redemption is real. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do next. Respect to both of them, the Marine and the officer. A few days later, Chief Turner called both Daniel and Ryan into his office. They sat across from each other too. Men who had started on opposite sides of respect, but somehow ended up teaching each other its true meaning. The chief leaned forward. "Going to be a town ceremony this Friday," he said. "For Veterans Day, the mayor wants to dedicate it to all our fallen heroes." He paused, then looked at Ryan, "And he wants you to say a few words." Ryan's eyes widened. "Me, sir?" I don't think Turner cut him off. "That's exactly why you should. You've learned what most don't in a lifetime." Ryan nodded slowly, glancing at Daniel, who simply smiled and said, "Just speak from the heart, son." Friday arrived. The small town square was filled with people, families, veterans, children, waving flags. A large banner read, "Milford Veterans Day Tribute, honoring those who served." At the front stood Daniel Reeves in his wheelchair, wearing his Marine dress blues for the first time in years. Beside him stood Ryan Cole, not in his police uniform, but in a simple white shirt and tie. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. As the national anthem ended, the mayor stepped up to the podium. "Today, we don't just honor the heroes who wore the uniform," he said, "but also the people who learn what that uniform truly means." He gestured toward Ryan. "Officer Cole, the floor is yours." Ryan stepped forward. For a moment, he said nothing, the silence heavy, the eyes of the crowd fixed on him. He took a slow breath and began. "A week ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I disrespected a man who had already given more for this country than I ever could, and in that moment, I realized something. Wearing a badge doesn't make you honorable. Acting with honor does." He looked at Daniel. "Sergeant Reeves showed me what true strength looks like. It's not in medals. It's in humility. It's in getting up every day, even when life takes something from you, and it's in forgiving people like me who didn't deserve it." His voice cracked slightly, but he continued, "Today, I'm not speaking as a police officer. I'm speaking as a man who learned from his mistakes. This flag behind me, it doesn't belong to any one of us. It belongs to all of us, and from this day forward, I'll live to make sure I never forget what it stands for." When he stepped back, the entire square went silent and then erupted into applause. Daniel smiled, clapping softly, but instead of pride, his expression carried peace, like a weight had finally lifted. Later that evening, as the crowd dispersed, Daniel sat quietly under the fading light. Ryan approached, holding a folded American flag, the same one Daniel had laid on the memorial stone. He knelt beside him. "You left this behind." Daniel smiled. "I was hoping you'd find it. I think it's time it found a new home." Ryan frowned. "You mean?" Daniel nodded. "You've earned it, son, not because you were perfect, but because you learned what it means to respect the imperfect." Ryan hesitated, tears welling in his eyes. "I don't deserve this." Daniel placed a hand on his shoulder. "Neither did I. Once, but this flag doesn't represent perfection. It represents forgiveness." Ryan clutched the flag to his chest, eyes glistening. "Thank you, Sergeant." Daniel smiled faintly. "Just Daniel." Now, that night, the local TV station aired the ceremony. The final frame showed Daniel saluting from his wheelchair, and beside him, Ryan standing silently, the folded flag in his hands. The voiceover from the mayor's closing speech echoed softly. "In Milford, we learned something simple yet powerful. Respect isn't a right, it's a responsibility." The camera slowly faded to the town's war memorial, bathed in the soft golden glow of sunset. At the base of the monument, someone had placed a small plaque that read, "For every hero who served, and for everyone who learns to honor them." Weeks later, Daniel passed away peacefully in his sleep. When Ryan arrived at the funeral, he found a note addressed to him. It read, "Ryan, if you're reading this, it means my time's come. Don't grieve, just promise me one thing. Keep reminding people that respect can rebuild what pride destroys." Daniel Reeves. Ryan stood there in silence, the folded flag pressed against his heart. He whispered, "I promise." Then, as the wind blew softly through the cemetery, he lifted his eyes to the horizon, and for the first time in a long while, he smiled. "You made it all the way to the end, and that says something. I hope this story gave you something to take with you, even if it's just a small thought or feeling. If it did, leave a like, subscribe, and tell me what stood out to you the most. I'd love to hear it."